Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. I'm Linda McFadden. I'm your chairperson today, and to my far left is Lynn Nesbitt, and my left, Neil Harden. Our assessor today is Stephen Lobenstein. Is it Lobenstein or
Yep.
Lobenstein?
Lobenstein.
Lobenstein,
Yep.
right. Sorry, I should know that. And Kara Balshaw will be our secretary. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city's administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included in the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You'll receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And I would ask that everyone put their phones on silent, please.
Please state your name.
Stephen Lobenstein.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Swear. Please state your name.
Jared Story?
Do you swear the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. The first item on our docket today is 106 Curfew, correct?
Yep.
When you're ready.
Okay. The roll number is 0309-299-3255, 106 Scurfield Boulevard. The assessed value is $2,700,000. The actual year and effective years built range from 1988 to 1989, but the effective year built is 1989. The original building was built in 1988. It was 10,560 square feet. The second building beside it or attached to it was built in 1989, and it's 11,235 square feet. The reason that I went into this is because recently there was a replot on this property. So this property has been combined as one. So it's okay, Mr. Story, I'd just like to hand out these pictures showing what the property used to look like and what it looks like now.
Sure.
Okay. So you can see by the red on the property there. Oh, sorry, they need to go together. My mistake.
Oh.
Yeah, I only have one just to pass around, just to show. So you have a roll number on each side.
Right.
It was broken up. So since then, we've contacted the owner. We wanted to put it together. They agreed that that was okay, and we've put the property together under one roll number.
Yeah, when was half a building on one
Right,
roll number and half
exactly.
a building on the other?
Exactly.
When was that?
That was
Very
recent, that was in
strange.
2016, I believe. So,
2016.
yeah.
Let's see that, I'll keep it.
So that's just to get an idea of what the property used to be like and what it's like now. So since then, this is reverted to an industrial property, which will have industrial parameters on it. The reason for this is basically because of the wall height, 17 to 18 feet. It has overhead doors. So we're treating it as an industrial property, not like a neighborhood shopping center property. So it's given the flex warehouse code, which means there is office in it and an industrial mix as well. So that's just a little bit of history of the property there. So moving on, the leaseable area is 21,405 square feet. The land to plan is 2.72. So now, although we've already seen a bit of the property, we'll turn to page 8 of my brief, and we can look at the map to see where it's located on 106 Curfew. So it's kind of in between, well, it is in between Kenniston and Waverly on Curfew Boulevard. Page 8 gives you a street view look of it. Page 9, you can have an overhead view of the property to see what it looks like. And you can see the land to plan. There's lots of parking for cars, as this is a flex warehouse, so it would have some, I guess, retail, or it actually has a restaurant in it as well. And page 10 shows you where the overhead door is. Off Henlow Bay, you can access it, and looks like there's some overhead doors between the two buildings. They're very squishy. You'd never be able to get a truck in there. That would be side loading only. So there's an idea of what the property looks like. So turning to page 4 of my brief, you can see the breakdown of the premises. As I stated before, one of these premises has the C4 class code on it, which is a restaurant and non-chain. So that gives you an idea. The rest of them are C2, so they're standard office industrial finishes. So turning to page 3, you can see my rent comparables. I tried to locate them within the area of the subject property. So the locations are on Waverly, Trottier Bay, Clarence, Scurfield, and Clarence. They're all relatively close to the subject property. They range in rents from $9 or $7.50 all the way up to $15.72. The effective years built range from 1973 all the way up to 1991, and the leased areas range from 1,875 square feet all the way up to 5,334 square feet. Within these comparables, the one at 1100 Waverly Street and 45 Trottier Bay, they're both restaurants. So I thought that might be important to show some comparables to the restaurant that they have in there.
Sorry, which one?
The one at 45 Trottier Bay and 1100 Waverly Street.
There's 3 on 1100. Which 1100 Waverly?
Oh, sorry, the very top one.
Okay.
Yeah, my mistake. Yeah, the very top one, sorry, my mistake. So moving on to page 4, you can see that we are applying our 2.5% vacancy. This is a pretty standard vacancy in the Fort Garry area. It's got very low vacancy in this part of the city. It's a good part of the city to have a business or have a building. And then, of course, we're applying our 2% expenses. We've been over this many times, but again, I'll just direct you to the non-recoverable expense sampling on page 19. It shows that 2% is adequate for industrial or for properties in general within the city of Winnipeg. And we're applying a 7% capitalization rate, which if you turn to page 6 of my brief, you can see falls within the 20th and 80th percentile for industrial properties with the city of Winnipeg. So, turning to page, so the mailer's on page 11, starts on page 11, and you can see there's the revenues and the expenses are on page 12, and 13 and 14 shows the rent roll of the property. So some of the commercial rents on page 14 show $9.50, $10. There is one for $5, another one for $10. That's on page 14. And same with on page 15, some of the commercial rents show $12 and $7.50. So we feel that the value of $2,700,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed by the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A question, Mr. Story?
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the material change that's happened from past cycles to this cycle is that the city is now viewing this property as an industrial property as opposed to a retail property, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And what exactly precipitated that change?
That would be when looking at the property, you can see it's got the higher wall height, it's got the overhead doors, it's similar to a flex warehouse in that space where There's a lot of, the office space is quite a bit smaller than the actual industrial space inside of it. So-
But that hasn't changed from cycle to cycle, has it?
In the sense that this is the first cycle that we've changed it
Right,
to.
the physical properties since 1989, or when
Yeah.
this building was built, are exactly the same.
Yeah, absolutely, nothing else has really changed.
And you said that the city contacted the owner,
Yep,
and you mentioned that you were going to merge the roles, correct?
correct.
And was the impact on their assessment, the change in the valuation parameters, was that made known to them when they agreed to merge those roles?
That I can't answer, I don't know that
Okay.
question.
Okay, suggest that we wouldn't be appealing it here today if they were okay with that. So up until now, the city has used retail parameters, now we're dealing with industrial, okay. Now, a neighborhood shopping center, would you agree that it would generally be a collection of independent retailers, services, restaurants perhaps, and other establishments?
Sure.
Okay, and this property would fit this definition, would it
Yeah,
not?
but similar to my rent comparables, they're all in flex warehouse properties that are considered industrial M2 zoning or mixed-use zoning, so industrial properties can have those as well.
Okay, so when you merged the roles, was it just the area of the leasable space that triggered this use change?
This use changed
The change, we're using the parameters now for industrial as opposed to retail.
Right.
And you said it's because we've merged the roles, but we've established that there's no physical change that occurred. So the only change that's happened is now we have one role with a larger
Right.
leasable area.
Correct.
So that's what's precipitated this
Mhm.
effectively.
Yep.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Now, I looked at your rent comps. Now, just for the sake of brevity, we are using our actuals. We went to 916,
Mhm.
you're at 934, so we're not worlds away, but I will point out that, now, you're saying that 45 Trottier is what? You said it's a restaurant?
It is it is owned by it's got food processing in there, it's similar to a restaurant. If you wanna know, Calabria Market is operating out of
Right.
there.
Okay, so is that more of a, that's food preparation, that's not a.
Sure.
Okay,
It's-
it's not a restaurant.
So I guess maybe I should have clarified, they don't sell food out of there, but they do make food out of there.
So it's food services as
Yes.
opposed to a restaurant.
So it's a very clean operation, very similar to a restaurant.
Right, but our restaurant is a licensed restaurant with
Yeah.
dine-in, takeout.
Yeah.
Okay, so slightly different. Or materially different, I should say. And now 39 Scurfield, which is number 9, that jumped out at me because that's $15.72 a square foot. That's a recovery center. You aware of that?
But it's in an industrial building,
Okay.
so
Okay, that's fine. Now, you've got on page 4, we've got our tenant class and ID. And again, I'm just gonna point out that restaurant, this compound is 16% restaurant, right? Which would be atypical for a flex warehouse space, would it not?
for a restaurant space, atypical?
No, for a flex warehouse, to have a
Yeah.
restaurant space in it that comprises 16% of the leasable area, would that not be a lot?
That I can't answer that.
And now the vacancy rate reported by the owner on the last mailer, the 17 mailer, is just a tick north of 20%. Is that not more typical of a retail enterprise than a flex warehouse enterprise?
Having 20% vacancy in
Yeah.
retail?
Yeah.
I'm not too sure.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Now, have you, so this is Gateway Kitchen and Bath Center.
Mhm.
It's safe to say that this is a showroom, correct?
I'm sure there's part of it, it's a showroom.
Have you seen the inside of
I
that?
have not, no.
Okay, those are my questions, thank you.
Ms. Nesbitt?
Yes, so just following up on some of the questions that have been asked
Sure.
about using now industrial
Mhm.
parameters. What impact does that have on how this property is assessed? For example, the vacancy rate, is it different for industrial versus retail? Cap rate range different?
Yeah, well, we can.
Rents even?
We can see the cap rates on
Mhm.
my chart I supplied on page, sorry. So you get an idea of the cap rates on the retail section, which in general they have a more tighter range, I would say.
Would it
than
be
the-
neighborhood, sorry, neighborhood strip
Yeah,
retail?
Yeah, neighborhood strip retail, I guess, so they from 6.15 as a high to 9.4, or 7.1 to 7.3, for the 28th percentile, it's fairly close to the industrial properties, I would say. There is a bit of a variance on the higher and the lower ends, but for the most part, the range is fairly similar for the cap rates. In terms of vacancy, industrial properties in the Fort Garry area in general have very low vacancy. In terms of, that's a very good area. It's actually to the point where single tenanted is basically 0% in the Fort Garry area, where the multi-tenant is a little bit higher, as per the Johnson report. But in terms of retail, I'm not too sure exactly what their vacancy rates are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what about rents? Would it have changed the rents that your model used, or?
Sure,
or the
I
comparables?
think as in compared to retail, I'm not totally familiar with retail, industrial is more my niche, but I would assume that retail would have higher rents, although in this situation, we're seeing they have a fairly large range of rents in this particular building here. They have some lower and some higher, so.
Would you say, in your opinion, that the change from retail parameters to industrial parameters, just doing that alone would have led to an increase in assessment?
I think in general, we're seeing an increased assessment for almost all property types across the board, so I don't believe that there would be a huge jump or a huge change between.
You don't believe it's a contributing factor? Or?
Not a huge contributing factor. I think we would have seen, if we kept it as a retail or a neighborhood shopping center, we would have seen an increase in value as well.
Okay. I think that's all then. Thank you.
Do you have questions?
Okay, what are the nature of the tenants? Do you know?
In there, well, there is a restaurant in there. There is we can look at the mailer here and get an idea.
Well, some of them are numbered companies, it's hard to make out what they do.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. Like you said, there's a kitchen and bath, there's a restaurant in there, a technology place. In terms of the number of companies, I'm not too sure what they do.
Okay. All right, that's my question.
And my questions have been asked and answered. So carry on with you.
Thank you very much. Okay, 106 Curfew Boulevard. Again, this building was built in two phases, in 1988 and 1989. The gross floor area is 23,240 square feet. And the city is suggesting a 2020 realty assessment of $2.7 million. We are suggesting that a value of $2,202,000 is more appropriate. And again, we're suggesting that the large jump in value is the contributing factor is the change from treating this property as a retail property, which we believe is appropriate, to changing it as to an industrial property, which is not appropriate in our mind. So we have a one-story building, again, built in 88 and 89. First part was 112 Scurfield and consisted of 10,560 square feet of leasable area. The second portion was addressed as 106 Scurfield and was built in 1989 and consisted of 11,235 square feet of leasable area. The two rolls were merged and it's now addressed as 106 Scurfield with a total leasable area of 21,405. Now, again, prior to the two properties being merged onto one roll, they were each assessed as neighborhood shopping center. And now the city has changed the parameters by which we approach this property and treating it as industrial. So, not to dwell on this, the assessor has modeled a net market rent of $479,590, which appears to be based on a net rental rate of approximately $9.34 per square foot. You can see on my page 7, we've used the actuals, and our overall rent is $9.16 per square foot. So the assessor has valued the property as a flex warehouse and applied a vacancy allowance of 2.5%. For 2018 and previous cycles, the subject was classified as an NSC, or neighborhood shopping center, and based on the parameters for NSC in the Guide to Income Producing Properties released by the city every year, the vacancy rate would be modeled at 4%, so we will apply this rate in our valuation. And there's a vacancy rate. We've now established that there's not a vacancy problem in terms of the industrial supply in the West Fort Garry area, but we are seeing vacancy north of 20%, which would indicate to us that this is acting more like a retail property than an industrial property. Now, For the 2020 assessment cycle, Altus continues to apply an allowance of 7% of effective market income. This is based on a standard allowance of 2% of the structural reserve allowance, as well as a 5% allowance for non-recoverable expenses that arise from the competent management and operation of the property. Interestingly, in this property, when you have 20% vacancy, presumably in order to lease this building out, there will be space marking and leasing commissions that will have to be paid out, so it's appropriate to capture those in this valuation cycle as an erosion to the income. Now, for the capitalization rate, the city is approaching this property with a 7% cap rate, and again, we presume that this is based on the current class change to a flex warehouse. For the 2018 property assessment, the subject was assessed as an NSC with a 7.75 cap rate, and that rate was agreed upon between the city and Altus. So we will continue to use a 7.75 cap. With all these points taken into consideration, our potential net market, our indicated market value at the reference date comes to $2,202,000, and we hope that we respectfully request that the City of Winnipeg will adjust that to more adequately reflect this property as a primarily a retail property. So again, we request a value of $2,202,000. In my brief, I've included, starting on page 22, you can see that we have, there's no debate here, but we have traditionally treated this property as an NSC, again a retail property, and we submit the main change here that's happened cycle over cycle is how we approach this property from retail to industrial. So barring any questions, that is my presentation. Thank you.
Do you have questions for Mr. Storr?
Yeah, just on your page 7, looking at your rents.
Okay.
The unit 106D and 106E,
Yeah.
similar square footage, same type of company, but there is a pretty large discrepancy in the rent. Do you know why that is?
I'm sorry, 106B and
106D and 106E, same company, similar size, leased area, but quite a large discrepancy in the rent.
one may be used for some storage. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'd be speculating.
So this is Quality Machine Services.
Yeah.
So that sounds like an industrial type property, or not property, but I guess a tenant. Would you agree?
I think that is somebody who's fixing photocopiers, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if that would be industrial. It's certainly a service, to be certain.
And so you're applying in an $8 per square shortfall, and so that's the cost to carry vacancy, basically. Why would retail space have a higher cost than industrial?
Why would retail?
Yeah, in terms of the shortfall, so we're applying $8 for vacancy. You're considering this a retail space, why does it carry a higher cost than an industrial space?
Well, these are the costs based on the actual common area property taxes. So these are actuals, right? We're not modeling.
Sure. In this type of property, is there a lot of common area?
No, there's not a lot of common area, but there's not a lot of common area.
Those are all my questions.
Ms. Nisbet?
Yes, your 7.75 cap rate.
Yes.
Can you explain to me why you went with that cap rate?
Sure. We have, in analyzing again, this is based on retail, in analyzing the market from Q1 of 2016 and Q1 of 2018, we've not seen any compression. That's a rate that was agreed upon by the city and Altus in the last cycle. So we've deemed that appropriate for this cycle and carried it forward.
Okay. Question about shortfall I had as well. I think that's all, thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Harden?
No questions.
And I think my questions have been asked and answered. So, is there any wish to summarize?
Good enough.
No. We will move on to 1135 Story.
Okay, 35 sorry, so the roll number is 0500936210. The owner is the Manitoba Hydroelectric Board. We have an assessed value of $1,574,000. So this is vacant industrial land. We're treating it as vacant industrial land. There's no actual building on it that's being leased out. The land area is 911,432 square feet. So we turn to page 2, we can get a look at the property. It's difficult to fit the whole property in a picture because it's a very long, narrow, skinny piece of property. It's a hydro, basically, line that runs through it to a substation. So page 3 gives you kind of another look. It's the property in red. And then lower down, you can see just a picture of sort of the substation they have there and the hydro lines that run through it. So turning to page 4, we have an agricultural zoning on it. So this district is intended for general agriculture activities. Page 5 is just the cost that we're using for it. So we do have $10,000 we're putting towards it for a detached structure. That would be part of the actual substation that is there. And then we have the land value of $1,574,000. So turning to page 6, you can take a look at the comparables. The comparables are all in relatively close proximity to the subject property. They're all just off McPhillips, so they're quite close. They're all vacant agricultural land, and they range in land area from 906,000 approximately all the way up to 1.8 million. So for the first comparable, we can turn to page 7, you can get a look at it. It's similar to the property in the sense of it's a long, skinny property. Its sale price is 78 cents a square foot, or per acre would be $34,177. Number 2, just below it there on page 7 is another similar type of property, long and skinny, used for agricultural use. It's sold for 69 cents a square foot. And that was in May of 2016, or sorry, yeah, May of 2016. Turning to page 8, you can see comparable 3, maybe not as skinny, a little wider. It sold for 77 cents a square foot in December of 2016. And comparable number 4, again, it's another long, skinny one, similar to the subject property, sold in November of 2016. And the last one on page 9, comparable 5, another long, skinny one, sold for 92 cents a square foot in January of 2013. So all these properties are similar to subject property in their zone agriculture. They're long, skinny properties. They have similar square footages, and they sold for all within a pretty similar price of one another. So on page 10, there's just the classification and liability. It is class code 60, although it is grantable because it is a hydro property. So I guess we feel the assessed value at $1,740,000 is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Sorry, yeah. The total value is $1,574,000.
574,000.
You're not counting the structure then? $574,000.
Sorry, my mistake. Maybe we.
On the front, you're $1,574,000.
Yeah.
On page 5.
Well, maybe we're. Just give me a second here. Maybe we're not
I
counting.
don't believe those are accessible.
They're not, yeah, I think we're not counting them. My mistake.
Okay.
Yes, we are not counting them.
Okay,
Yeah, that's my fault.
Okay.
So yeah,
so it's a land value only.
it's land value.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Thank you very much. Questions, Mr. Story?
Sure, yes, okay. Okay, first of all, the property type, vacant industrial, but this is vacant agricultural, correct?
Yeah, the property type code is just something, an internal code that we use, so yeah, it is, the zoning is agricultural.
Okay, and would you agree then that the value that comes from vacant land like this is in its development potential?
No, not necessarily, because although land can be developed. Right now, this is being used for agricultural, which is not gonna be developed.
Well, right now it's being used as a hydro corridor.
That is true, it is being used as a hydro corridor, so it is improved land, but we're only assessing the land under.
Just the land number.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, it's one roll number, but it's a fractured parcel,
Mhm.
and it's extremely long and extremely skinny in most places, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it's, again, it's dotted with these 250, 350 kilovolt towers, big lines, okay. So we have to suspend disbelief, pretend those aren't there, and what is this land worth as though it were completely vacant? And, but you're saying it doesn't, it's not, it doesn't matter if it's developable or not, that's not where the value comes from.
Well, that's not how we're valuing it, it's zoning as agricultural land.
Right,
So
okay.
those are the comparables that we're looking for.
Okay, that's fine. So the comps that you've used, are those developable?
Sure, if somebody was to purchase these and they wanted to put in water and road and sewers and everything else, but similar to this property, they're very long and skinny, so they're probably a little more hard to develop than your nice rectangles or your squares.
Okay. These comps that you're using, were they all purchased by the same person?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Are you sure?
I'm not sure, no,
Are you
but,
sure that they weren't purchased for the purpose of the land assemblage?
well, they're all on different sides of McPhillips, so I don't know how they could assemble the lands together.
Hold on. When I look at your comp 1 and 2, those are right next to each other,
Yeah,
aren't they?
those are next to each other.
So that's, okay, and then your comps here. So I asked because there's been some I live out there, so there's been some
Mhm.
development, it's called Aurora Point North, right? Yeah. Okay, now, do you think that maybe these were purchased in relation to some of that development that's happening in that northwest corner?
As far as I'm concerned, they're not developed at the moment, so
Okay.
I don't, and as of the reference date, they weren't developed, so.
And at the reference date, it would have been known that, that the city has some plans to potentially punch through the Chief Pegulas pass-through, is that correct? Up to McPhillips?
I'm not aware of that.
You're not aware of that?
No.
Okay, but can we agree then if somebody were to purchase this in order to assemble plots of land for development at a later date, they would likely pay a premium versus the type of land that we're doing today?
I guess if you're asking if this land's developable compared to the hydro land, because there's hydroelectric poles and towers on it, absolutely, that land can't be developed, but it already is improved land, in a sense.
Okay.
Even though we can't assess what's happening on the land, we can only assess the land underneath it.
And is there a development plan on these comparables that you provide?
Not to my knowledge, no.
There's not, but there has been development here, and there are some.
There is development in that area. We keep pushing out towards the perimeter. We all know this in
Right.
Winnipeg, the perimeter is not the perimeter of the city anymore.
Right.
So, yeah, they could very well be developed at some point, but at the time of the sale and the reference date, they are not developed.
Okay, just to conclude, you didn't look in to see if these were purchased by a single purchaser?
No, I did not.
Okay, those are my questions, thanks.
Ms. Nestor?
Can you just come back to me?
Sure,
on that?
I can do that, Mr. Hardy.
Yeah, I have no questions.
That was quick.
Sorry, Lynn, I have no questions either.
Wait. Okay, so
No
you're,
pressure.
you're using a rent of 82 cents,
That is
Yeah,
correct.
I think, is what you're using.
Yep.
When I look at your comparables, there's only one other, well, there's one at 82 and one at 92.
Well, up in the range, I have as low as 68 cents, as
Yeah.
high as 92 cents. I have one at 78, one at 77.
So you are sort of in the middle-ish. Mhm. Okay, I have no questions.
All right, Mr. Story, would you
Thank you very
proceed?
much. Okay, so again, we have a hydroelectric corridor, and it's an extremely irregular parcel. It's just a tick south of 44 acres. A great deal of it is landlocked, some of it's unserviced, some of it is serviced. But it starts at the hydro substation at 1135 Story Road. Now, just to give you a sense, I managed to get it onto one page here. You can see that it is fractured. It's a large, long, skinny piece, and just to give you a visual of it, it's where you have the two hydro transmission sites with the lines between them, and it goes on for, as far as the eye can see, for many, many miles. This is one section of it that's providing power presumably to the northwest corner of the city. Now I've included the close-ups of each part of it here. You can see this is just generally vacant agricultural land, but the question as to whether or not it's developable and whether it's a regularity in terms of its size, in terms of its servicing, it's a bit of a mixed bag of vacant land. So again, it's predominantly unserviced. It runs north from Templeton to the north edge of the city at Ernest Road, and it's located just west of McPhillips Street. Again, 43.9 acres, which is 1,902,284 square feet, and it's zoned agriculture. The majority of the corridor is approximately 60 meters or 200 feet wide. There's one section on the north side of Story Road that widens to about 400 feet, but this section is where which is partially covered by the non-accessible equipment for the hydro substation. There's also a 384-foot shed that's part of the substation gear. Okay, so there are 3 access points. There's Templeton, Story Road, and Balgona. That's the north side only. The south side is separately assessed. And the only section of this property that is near services would be the southmost section of Templeton, which is just west of the city Winnipeg Fire Paramedic property and a 7-inch school division bus terminal. That's approximately 200 feet deep on the south side of Templeton, and we would estimate that the area of this, what we'll call superior section of land, to be about 400 feet deep to the north and about 200 to the south, equating to a total area of 120,000 square feet. The rest is unserviced, predominantly landlocked agricultural land. So we've approached this by dividing the total property into the serviced land around Templeton, which is 120,000 square feet. The unserviced land with road access at Story Road, which is 100,000 square feet, and Balgona, which is 80,000 square feet. And then again, the vast majority, which is predominantly landlocked, unserviced agricultural corridor land, which is 1,612,284 square feet. And now again, we're acting as though there are no hydro lines here, but any development on the site at this point is severely restricted by the fact that there are hydro lines dotting the entire property. Okay. Now, the Manitoba Hydro Act says that effectively that hydro is actually exempt from municipal taxation. I've included that here, but they've not pursued that this cycle. So when we take that into consideration, we tend to look at the lower end of the land value as though we have to put a value on it, but it's not generally land that's developable or valuable in the market. So all that being said, on page 11 I've got a bunch of land sales that you can see here. Now the best indicator of value would be indices 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8. And I say that because they're all old rail corridors. So that's probably the closest that we're going to get to figuring out what this very irregular parcel of land is worth. And those range in time-adjusted sale price from 28 cents per square foot to $1.72 per square foot. Okay, so with that taken into consideration, I've included all of these here. You can see this is previously a CP rail, and this is behind properties on McDermott, west of McPhillips, and that was purchased in 14 for $1.34 a square foot. Again, a long skinny area, but it is next to some developed properties. Number 3 is again an old CN property sold to the city of Winnipeg. Now occasionally these can sell as public walkways, greenways, bike paths, something like that. So the city of Winnipeg might be a purchaser of these lands, and they purchased this in 11 for 22 cents per square foot. Okay, we've got an old. This is Wilkes off Charleswood. I believe this was part of a park. That's 19 cents a square foot. That's number 4. So I won't go through all of these, but effectively what we've determined when examining all these sales of irregular parcels is that a value range of $3 per square foot to 40 cents per square foot, depending on the quality. So the quality, the higher quality part, 120,000 square feet that I mentioned, of Templeton is $3 a square foot. $1 for the 180,000 square feet, which is Balgona and Story, And then the remainder of that larger regular parcel, at 1.6 million square feet, we've applied a rate of 40 cents. So at the end of the day, our entire blended rate comes to 62 cents per square foot for the entirety of this property. And so we believe the subject parcel should be valued at $1,185,000. Thank you very much.
Questions from Mr. Story?
Sure, so we've based on an agreement that it's difficult to develop this land, you basically can't, there's restrictions on it.
It's basically, there's basically no market for this land, I would say, and we're here to talk about market value, so it becomes a nebulous task.
Sure.
to certain.
Can this land still be farmed?
Can it be farmed? Well, it's landlocked, so you'd likely have to own the adjacent parcels, I would imagine. And I mean, well, I don't know, I'm not an agriculture expert, so I don't know about the quality of the soil or anything like that.
Do you
but,
know if it is being farmed by chance?
I don't, well, no, it can't be, it's got hydro lines on it.
With the hydro lines on it, it can be farmed.
With hydro lines, there are a huge amount of restrictions. You can't do anything that would end up with standing water anywhere near these sites. You need 24-hour access for hydro to access these towers. You need, there's a litany of restrictions on it.
So, but I'm interested because this is a broken up piece of property, so where it's broken up, they're not allowed to pass under those hydro lines or farm under those hydro lines, even though that's their land.
I'm sorry, say that
So
again?
if you look at, you spoke to the fact that this is not a continuous or contiguous
Right.
piece of land, it's broken up, so these,
Right.
they obviously don't own these properties here,
Right.
so they can't do any development under there.
There may be an easement
They can't-
on that
right,
land.
an easement, okay.
There may be, I'm not sure, but I know that there is a huge amount of, you can't put metal structures anywhere near any of these things, right? You can't have anything, you can't do any kind of grading work, you can't have anything that affects the water, standing water on these sites, so it's, no, I would suspect that there's probably not farming going on, though perhaps it could, I don't know.
Okay, those are all my questions.
Ms. Nesbitt?
Yeah, Mr. Story, on
Yes.
your comparables on page 11,
Okay.
you cited comparables 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8 as your best
Yes.
comparables. Yet, the largest of those is only a third the size of the subject property.
Yeah, well, it's where,
And you
well, I
would
would
say that that's comparable?
well, it's difficult to find
Mhm.
44 acres of,
No, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
yeah, no,
We
it's-
have some that the assessor found,
right.
and you have some yourself,
Mhm.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, you know, everything pretty much from, I'd even go 9, it'd be generous, index
Okay.
10 down. You don't
Right.
think those are comparable?
I think, well, sorry, can you speak to a certain?
Yeah, sure.
Which one
I
would
guess-
you like me to speak to?
Part of my question is, I don't know the configuration of these
Right.
properties. I don't know if they're long and skinny like the subject. I don't know the access like the
sure.
subject. Do you have any in here that are similar to the subject?
Yeah, I think the ones that are, well, again, the old rail corridors are most similar based on their development potential. So when we look at, 5, 3, 15, 17, those were purchased with the intention to create residential development.
Right.
So they will sell at a premium.
And they have a different zoning on them as well.
Absolutely.
This one has an agricultural
Right.
zoning on it.
That's right.
So it's obviously sitting there for
Yeah.
agricultural purposes only, right?
Well, it's sitting there for the purposes of Hydro having their
Yeah.
corridor on it, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
right there,
Yeah.
of course. But it can be farmed.
Well, I don't know if it can be farmed. I'm not sure. Perhaps, I don't know. I know that Hydro needs access to it 24
Yes.
hours. I
Yes.
know that there are restrictions on what you can build, even for an outbuilding. If you were to farm and have you can't have any metal buildings anywhere near any of these things, and you certainly can't do anything that affects the water basin, so,
But
Or
you
grain.
can do some grain farming or hay farming or
Perhaps, I don't
whatever,
know.
right?
yeah, perhaps, yeah.
In rural Manitoba happens all the time,
Yeah.
hydro lines
Yeah,
going
yeah.
through somebody's farm.
Sure, yeah,
They just do,
yeah.
right? Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, thanks.
Mr. Harden?
Okay, if I'm looking at your photos on pages 3, 4, 5, and 6, just from the air photos, it does look like large portions of this land is being cultivated. And at one point on the bottom of page 5, it looks like somebody is doing something, storing equipment or doing something on that land, I can't make out what.
I'm sorry, which photo and which page were we looking at?
On the bottom of page 5, it looks like
Yeah.
somebody's got a lot there with some stuff on it.
Yeah, not sure, can't,
Yeah, but for the most part, it looks like it's being cultivated in the other photos.
sure, yeah. But it's certainly not being developed for residential purposes or anything like that. So
No.
perhaps farming is going on there, that's, yeah, that seems correct, sure.
They could be, Hydro could be
Yeah.
leasing out the farming rights or something like that.
Could be, yeah, it could be. Again, it's hard to say from these photos, but perhaps.
Yeah. Okay, that was my question.
If I just go to page 30, where you've done a calculation,
Sure.
I get a different number.
Oh, okay.
And also, the area that you're using differs from the area that the city is using. Do you account for that difference? City has 1,911,000, so it's about 1,000 feet.
Oh,
That's
okay.
different. You've got 912.
I'm not sure. That I can't speak to, I don't know.
But if I multiply your 1,912,284 times 0.62, I get, it would round to I got 1,185,600,000.
Oh, yes, you're correct. Yeah,
Rand.
that's correct.
So 1,100,000.
186. Yeah, that's correct.
So 186, okay.
Yes.
I think that's all my questions. Okay, is there any wish to summarize?
We've said it all.
We're good? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And we'll move on to 644 Aaron Street.
Yeah, 644 Aaron Street, the roll number is 1301114210000. The assessed value is $431,000. There are two different classifications. One is 60 other and the other one is 10 residential. There are some apartment buildings or above the building itself. So I do have a recommendation for this. Recommendation is $394,000. That's adjusting the rent of the warehouse portion to $7.35 a square foot. So again, that offer is $394,000.
Sorry, what was that rent again?
$7.35.
And
We will accept.
you'll accept that? Okay. Correct. How, so that just affects the 341 or?
That just affects the 341, correct?
And the 394 is the total still?
The 394 is the
So
total.
could you break them out for us, or?
Sure.
Thank you.
So that means it's $90,000 for the, obviously the residential 10.
Correct, because that stays the
Yeah,
same,
okay,
yes.
and then it is, sorry, just give me a sec here. I actually didn't break it down myself.
That's the 304,000.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, just subtract it,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, so
Yeah.
304,000, yeah.
Okay.
See, engineers don't need a spreadsheet.
All right. I believe that brings our hearing to a close. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.